Hello, my name is Damon Earnshaw, and I'm doing this video to help out with esophageal cancer patients, and also anybody newly diagnosed with cancer that's spending a lot of time on the web searching for quick answers. I created a website called meversuscancer.com, and it's mainly just to help you navigate a little faster on some of the answers. My history, 2011 I was diagnosed with esophageal cancer stage 2, which is adenocarcinoma with submucosal invasion. And my symptoms were basically choking issues over the course of a couple years prior. And then I finally went into an ER and got scoped by a GI, and they found a tumor that was blocking my esophagus. And after the biopsy, you know, your life has, of course, ever changed at that point. You spend a lot of time researching, studies, hospitals, surgeons, etc. And this is why I wanted to help out with that. And you just have to become an expert in your own cancer immediately, because you just need to be able to articulate and understand what's happening to you. Then you become an exceptional patient as fast as you can as well, so you know what to do and how to do it. So the site's called meversuscancer.com, and I wanted to do it because, you know, really any diagnosis, it radically alters your perceptions and paradigms of your life. You know, and I also realized I'll become the family history. And if you're going to be the family history, you want to be able to know what to do and how to do it, so that way, you know, I have a 5-year-old son at the time last year, and he's now 6, and I want to make sure he's ready if this ever happens 20 years later. And esophageal has a 95% death rate in 5 years on most websites, and it scares you right away. So then you're researching as much as you can, as fast as you can. I also, on the website, would try to help you with some other things, like, you know, I believe the squeaky wheel gets the grease in life, and you have to deal with hospital protocol and getting medical records, having too many questions, not asking the right questions, the PAs getting upset with you, and, you know, the surgeons and the thoracics and oncology and things like that. There's a lot of things to deal with, and I like to, you know, I use my iPad to do a lot of my videos, and go back and really dictate and read and go over, you know, what the doctors and physicians were telling me. And then also, you know, you just become part of this cancer club, and you're dealing with not only a fatalistic notion of what's happening to you, but also you're dealing with trying to figure out the battle plan. And then also you realize sometimes halfway through, you know, you realize it's the best thing that's ever happened to you, because, and that sounds very crazy, but all of a sudden you have this forced prioritization, and you have to start dealing with your own mortality and try to be, you know, a better person and do the things you always should have done, and you know, and strengthen up your relationships and whatnot, and that helps throughout the whole process as well. But you also are looking for this big word, this hope. You know, the hope comes from, for me, it was information and connections and how to get to the right doctors, the right hospitals, etc. And making sure I was, you know, finding the right path all the way through. You know, I spent the first week with 3 different opinions in my local doctors, and they were all on the same page. They all spent about 20 to 30 minutes, looked over my PET scans, my CTs, and the EUS information, and they all said the same thing. Neoadjuvant chemoradiation and esophagectomy, and which would basically remove my esophagus and my stomach at the same time, and you're in bed from 2 to 4 months in the hospital, and then you're also, you know, bedridden at the house for another 4 to 6 months. So, you know, I immediately went into research mode and tried to find out what other options, and am I reading everything right, or looking for the commonalities, opinions, etc. And the case manager said you can go essentially get other opinions if you want to travel and spend the money on the travel. So of course I was, you know, out and about on the next plane. I was at MD Anderson right away, getting that second opinion, but that was out of state, and I was looking for, you know, different answers from a larger cancer center, which, you know, proved to be very, very good for me to go down there. And I spent a lot of time on the way studying the stats, procedures, studies, patients, doctors, hospitals, studying, and trying to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. I was well prepared, well versed, and understood who the best hospitals were, who the best surgeons were. If I've got one chance at this and I'm going to save my own life, and I didn't want to mess it up. I also used a website called Elance to help with all the reading, and it's a great company, and also CancerDecisions.com, and that was the Moss reports, and they just basically pump out all the most recent cancer information that you can get your hands on every situation for every cancer. So that helped tremendously as well on making my decisions. So I was willing to travel and get the opinions fast, and so I ended up in Houston right away, and they ended up doing on my EUS, which essentially they ended up doing 27 biopsies instead of 3, and they use what's called a multidisciplinary committee to vote. Essentially, the physicians and thoracics and surgeons, oncologists come together, look your case over, and they essentially vote and say, okay, this is what I would do for Damon, and it makes you feel a lot stronger about the situation, because as a patient, you don't want to spend 20 minutes with somebody and then they tell you exactly what's going to happen without being, well thought out, and all that situation. So, that being said, when I got to Houston, they gave me a completely different scenario, saying you could do this endoscopically, you don't need chemoradiation, and you don't need an esophagectomy, which was, pretty confusing as a new cancer patient. You're already, drastically confused all the time anyway. So Dr. Rice at MD Anderson said you need a tiebreaker. Then go to, and I already had an appointment with Sloan Kettering in New York, and Sloan was number 2 on my radar to get as much information as I could and see what they thought, and hopefully they would either line up with the physicians at my hometown, or they would line up with MD Anderson. And that next week they were basically telling me, hey, you are submucosal invasion, you're stage 2, and you could do this. It's your decision essentially. You could do this treatment plan, and we agree with MD Anderson, and we would not remove your esophagus or stomach, and we would also go ahead and tell you there's no need for chemoradiation. And so that made me feel a little bit better about the decision going forward. But then, of course, they said, the one piece of the puzzle missing is the surgeon. Because you're submucosal invasion, you're very, very unique, and you need to have somebody that's done a lot of these. And Dr. Ritz was great to tell me, hey, I don't do enough of them to feel comfortable here. You might want to just see this guy to make sure you want to go with what you want to go with. And ended up at UPMC, which is University Medical Pittsburgh. So UPMC was great. Dr. Job was the one that ended up doing my resections. It's called EMR, endoscopic mucosal resections. And he was able to basically go down the esophagus endoscopically and take it out in piecemeal, essentially. And they do it. They give you 90 days in between each one, so you can basically release the swelling, heal up a bit better, and then they come back and recut and remove slowly. And it keeps from having too many strictures, and that way you're not closing up completely. So that was a great thing for my situation. I was able to keep my organs in place and not do chemoradiation. And now I'm happy to say I'm doing all my follow-up and surveillance at MD Anderson in Houston. And Dr. Rice is doing all that, and he's been great. So again, the website's called meversuscancer.com. When you survive something like this, all you want to do is give back and help out, because you're so scared in these hospitals. Anybody can give you information is a godsend. So we'd love to do anything we can to help you. So meversuscancer.com. Contact me, use the website all you want, and let me know what you need. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.